on the path to unlocking our unique gift,
Yeah.
calling and obligation, let's start unpacking what is the unique self.
Let's play. No, that's great. That's great. I mean, unique self is, let's start, I guess, in the middle, which is always a great place to start. So know thyself, right? I mean, that great injunction. So who am I? Right? So who am I? So what's the classic answer? And let's play with, let's say, 5 selves. Let's play with 5 selves. So the classic answer, of course, and you've invoked it 4 or 5 times, each time elegantly, in our conversation today, the classic answer to who am I is, I'm a skin encapsulated ego. I'm a separate self, right? I'm Marc, I'm André. And that's of course true. Right? Let's start there, right? I'm not André and you're not Marc. And the separate self exists in the mind of God.
Can I ask for a distinction? Because you said it's true, and of course it's real, like it's an aspect of reality. But would you just make a distinction between what is real and what is true?
Yeah, it's
because
great.
on one aspect, it is a reality of this dimension, and
it's a reality, and it's also a partial truth, right? And that's the thing. In other words, separate self means I wake up in the morning and I have a sense of being Marc. And actually, if I thought I was André, let's say I walked in today and I said, hey, and you said, hey, Marc. I said, no, I'm André. So at first you'd think, oh, I guess that was funny, right? You'd kind of like, okay, like it's a little weird in person, but okay. But then I would keep going like for 5 minutes. It's like about 20 minutes in, you're going to call, I don't know, our mutual friend D, and you're going to say, what were you thinking? This guy is insane. He is out of his mind, right? So the first level of sanity is knowing my fundamental identity, and all of Western psychology appropriately is about having a healthy separate self. And it is true, there is a truth. It's not all of the truth, but it's a dimension of the real that I have a separate self. And so the classical answer to who am I is I'm a separate self. The only problem with that answer, which is partially true and participates in the real, is that it's partial. It's not enough. I'm more than a separate self. I feel like I'm more than a separate self. I go to Superman and I want to have more power than I do. I don't exactly want to die. I feel connected to forever, right? I feel larger, right? I see an inspiring moment and something explodes in my heart, which is not about my separate self desires, or I rest in the depth of the silence and I explode into this larger space, and then I feel this voice calling me. All of this, right, is making me insane in a different way. So my separate self's insufficient. So maybe we could say it like this. Separate self is a puzzle piece. And the puzzle piece is told, you're the whole thing. And the puzzle piece says, oh, I'm the whole thing. Kind of hard to walk around as a puzzle piece. You ever tried to be a puzzle piece and walk? It doesn't do well. It's like, you're like, right? So you're like, but you want to be part of the larger puzzle, but then your therapist, right? And your school tells you want to be part of the larger puzzle. That's like weird. That's like a cult. That's a regressive kind of crazy idea. But you know that you're yearning for something, but you're told that it doesn't exist. There's just a puzzle piece. So you're filled with anxiety, and we have a level of breakdown and depression, right? And you try Prozacian responses, and they're partially effective. So you're like, what am I going to do? So then you realize, oh, okay, no. I'm gonna liberate myself.
Mm-hmm. Before we liberate ourselves, which I'm excited to do,
okay.
I'm just
Andre's putting a block on liberation. Not me.
Sorry, y'all. Just quick thought. What do you think is the current percentage of the population on the planet that presume themselves to be a separate self?
I would say 98, 99, 99.5%.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, that's high.
Yeah, that's high. That's the overwhelming majority of the planet. Now,
okay,
as a separate self, I might be in relationship to God.
Right.
So I might be a Sikh, and I might be a Hindu, and I might be a Jew, and I might be a Muslim or a Christian. But that means I'm a separate self in relationship to a creator God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a separate self, though.
Okay. So that's
fair.
That's discerning belief and actuality of embodiment.
Here I am. I'm a separate, and I'm separate. In other words, that's what I am. And I'm a separate self who's a monadic unit, and I am in relationship perhaps to a larger world or not. but I'm a separate self.
Okay.
And paradoxically, a religionist and an atheist share in common, most of them, that we're separate selves.
Yeah.
They actually have a shared sense of identity. Now, the religionist makes it a little better and says we happen to have a soul in there, which is helpful, right? Okay, that's a step, but I'm still a separate self.
Both in many ways believing something they haven't experientially come to know.
I don't have direct access.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, direct access. And
So back to liberation.
let's get back to liberation. But let's go to your direct access for a second. Along the way to liberation, Aquinas's favorite verse, the great Christian mystic Aquinas' favorite verse in the Bible was from David, who we talked about earlier, which is Tamu ur'u ki tov Adonai, taste and see that God is good. And Aquinas understood correctly as a good realizer exactly what you, of course, just said so beautifully, that they can't get there. They don't have an actual experience of it. You have to taste it. So you've got to taste. It's not a cognitive claim that I have. It's an actual direct experience, and that experience is liberation, or moksha, or enlightenment, or redemption, or right, comes by many names, right? But the experience is I'm not just a puzzle piece. There's a whole, a complete puzzle, and and the lines separating the puzzle pieces are an illusion, and I'm part of the whole. I'm inseparable from the whole, right? The whole lives in me. I live in the whole. Right? I am part of this field of consciousness, which is the way it's usually understood. And maybe we'll get to talk about later. It's not just a field of consciousness. That's a mistake. It's also a field of eros. It's also a field of interconnectivity. But for now, it's this field. It's called, let's say in Kabbalah, Chakel Tapuchin Kadishin in Aramaic, the field of holy apples. Right? It's the seamless code of the universe. So the seamless code of the universe, right, which we would call not separate self, but true self. And true self is the singular. Schrodinger said that the physicist, the singular that has no plural, or the total number of true selves in the world is one. So that's true self. So the problem with true self is, first of it, before the problem, it's stunning. It's beautiful, right? It's the change that changes everything. It's the realization that I'm not just omniconsiderate of the whole, right? The whole is part of me. It's part of my very identity. That's what I mean by true self. That your true self is not your separation. Right? It's actually your true self. Very beautiful, very true. It changes everything. It's stunning, and it's just as crazy making, right, as separate self. Because you say to your teacher, you say, okay, there's a hole here, but I see these lines separating the puzzle pieces. And your teacher says, die on the cushion, right? That's an illusion. And you say, okay, I'll meditate some more. But you say, but I seem to be also, that's separation. And you get this very, very powerful transmission that says that your experience of being distinct is an illusion. And you've got this deep sense inside of you that it does not feel like an illusion.
Yeah.
And your teacher keeps telling you that's an illusion. So you keep sitting. So just like separate self, I'm a puzzle piece, there's no puzzle, makes you insane. It actually challenges your sense of reality. So does true self. Because true self says that your entire experience of distinction is separation. And that's actually a violation of the real. And that which is real is only true self. So for example, at separate self, you're all about your story. And then you're told, leave your story behind. Okay, true self, leave the story behind. But then you wake up in the middle of your story all the time, every day and every night. And you're like, huh? Right? And so you've got this bifurcated self, which is actually a rift in your essential beingness. So we can't stop there. To stop at yourself is tragic. And I've met over the last 30, 40 years, countless people trapped in this kind of tyranny of true self. And maybe 30 years ago, my friend, when I started talking about this, I won't mention figures, but to key figures, or kind of leading teachers of true self, philosophers, teachers, they all would look at me kind of with a bemused smile. This kind of, oh, poor Mark.
Yeah.
He's stuck in separate self. He's still stuck in separate self. He doesn't realize it. And I in my body just, and mind and heart just, I knew it wasn't true. And I went deeper and deeper into kind of the path of realization, and it just exploded with a kind of clarity. And the clarity is there's a seamless code of the universe, but the seamless code of the universe is It's seamless, but it's not featureless. And its feature is you. In other words, you are a distinct expression of the field of true self. And here I want to, if I can, with your permission, and you're stuck with me, so at least for another couple minutes, right? But if we can, let's just try and just take a 2-minute crazy deep dive for a second, because to really get it, once we get it, it's like, huh. So in a certain sense, the West, and this is what's so crazy making, the Western tradition said, separate self is what's real. So the entire Western tradition, separate self is real. The East says, true self is real. True self says separation is not true, right? So what are West and East both trying to do? They're trying to get over suffering. They're not like bad folks in the West and good folks in the East, or vice versa. These are two groups of people trying to overcome suffering. So the West says you overcome suffering by realizing you're not part of this larger totalitarian whole. You have dignity as a separate self. You have an inalienable rights, right? As a human being, every human being has this inalienable right as a separate self, not part of any other whole, for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that lives in our body, and that's true. And the East says, no. If you stay in that separate self, you're going to be devastated and filled with anxiety. And the first noble truth, life is suffering. So how do you resolve those? So both the West and the East got confused about the same thing. And you can check the text. And it's like, and I remember there's a moment where it became clear to me, and I called my dear friend Ken Wilber, and I was just ecstatic. And we just got excited about the distinction. And it's the distinction between separateness and uniqueness. And it's such a core distinction. So in order to go beyond suffering and to realize that I have inalienable rights, I don't need to be separate self. I'm now on the West side. I can actually be unique self, meaning I'm not separate. I'm part of the larger whole, but my rights, my inalienable rights, are based on my unique self. I'm a unique expression, unique feature of the field. Now, the East also got confused. The East said, in order to move beyond suffering, you need to move beyond your separate self. That's true. But you don't stop at your true self. Your true self sees through a unique set of eyes. So my unique self is the unique discretion of true self. So once I distinguish between separateness and uniqueness, I actually realize that true self and separate self both have intuitive truths. One is the dignity of distinction, separate self. The other is the realization of the whole, true self. Those synergize and come together, and actually a more accurate and higher, literally higher, deeper structure of consciousness, which is I'm a unique self, which means that the answer to who are you, when I say who are you, that question we had, who are you? You are an irreducibly unique expression of the love, intelligence, and love beauty that is the animating energy and eros of all that is, that lives in you, as you, and through you, that never was, is, or will be ever again other than through you. And as such, you have a unique perspective and a unique quality of intimacy that fosters your unique capacity to give your unique gift, to address the unique need in your unique circle of intimacy and influence that can be addressed by you and you alone, and no one that ever was, is, or will be in the history of cosmos has that capacity to give the unique gift that you have to give. And when you give it, you're an expression of the whole, distinguished, giving that unique gift. That's unique self.